Good morning, guys. Welcome to the podcast. Wherever you are in the world, hopefully you're okay. We have a snowstorm here in Texas, but today's guest is Chad Cooper, and he is going to talk to us all about leadership. And his book, Time Isn't the Problem, You Are, is a compelling question for the podcast audience. We're going to talk about the biggest barriers to effective time management, leadership, coaching, and I'm really happy to have him on for the listeners. So, Chad, welcome.
Thank you. I understand in Texas you guys don't have the equipment, so yeah, I had another interview early this morning and they couldn't make it because of the weather. So a lot of you all in Texas and learning how to drive. I'm from the north, so we know how to drive in that, and that's just an everyday thing. But I got smart and I learned to move to the tropics. So what can I say?
Yeah, I love that. And we were just sharing stories about, we almost got stranded and just weather. The climate change is no joke these days. And so start off by introducing yourself and what the audience can take away. And I'm really excited to dive into the questions.
Sure. So I'll start with I retired from Microsoft when I was 35. So I understand what it is to work in the corporate world. I've owned and sold apartment complexes and been an entrepreneur for, I don't know, almost the last 20 years. I worked with the number one coaching organization and was the number one coach in that organization, serving billionaires, celebrities, professional athletes, Olympians, etc. So I'm the guy that you never knew behind the scenes at World Series and Stanley Cups and Olympic gold medalists, you name it. So I've got a few tips and secrets to help people understand how can somebody like Elon Musk, regardless of how you feel about the guy, how can this guy run like 20 companies and, an entire space company, an automotive company, an AI company, all of these things. And we're struggling to figure out how to get through 8 hours of work in a day. There's some tricks. If he can do it, and Oprah Winfrey can do it, there's a lot of people who have figured that out. And there's a specific formula. It's about being resourceful and it's about mindset. So that's what I'd love to share with people and help them be able to kind of compound that ability as well.
Yeah. And piggybacking off of that intro, which I really loved, is what's the number one difference between Elon Musk, Oprah, and the mainstream? Why do people struggle so much?
I would say there's a couple of things that they do. One is they have the courage. So when I was an executive and moved into being a elected official, and in that role as an elected official, I learned that courage is probably the rarest leadership quality. And it takes courage to be able to say no. And Elon Musk is quite versed and quite capable of being able to say no. The second is the ability to know what your outcome is. And so they know from the beginning what their outcome is, what's the destination, and then they work backwards to be able to achieve that destination. Most people actually don't start with the end in mind. So if you look at J.K. Rowling as an example, she wrote Harry Potter with the end.
Yeah, and it's all about one thing that I've learned is just studying truly successful people is that they, it's the same thing, but their approach and their mindset is just very different. And, the very best, they stick to the basics. We think everything is rocket science. So first thing is, it's like January 21st and, everybody, it's past the January 14th, which is known as National Quitters Day. So, for the people that are still remaining, what are strategies to maximize your day and master your time?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So I would say in that my clients actually, we start with New Year's resolutions, if that's what you want to call them, but we start that goal setting and that planning in October. And so think about if you start in October, by the time that you get to January, and we ask two questions. So back to the previous question that leapfrogs into this, is we have two questions that we have to ask in life. One, where am I going? And two, who's coming with me? And so if we ask that question in the wrong order, it can really mess things up. And a lot of us have a difficult time as we grow, as we see opportunities in front of us. We do National Quitters Day because of the judgment, because of our fear, because of people saying, "Oh, I know who you really are. Come on, you're not capable of doing that." And so we actually give up on ourselves because of the influence of others. But if we actually begin in October, 3 months ahead, and we're running at full speed when that starting gun goes off in January, nobody's going to have a chance of catching us. We're going to blow way past them because we're at full speed at the starting gate. That's how you continue going past the January 14th. The second thing that we have to do is we begin, as I said before, is begin with the end in mind. And in doing that, we really need to understand the strength of the purpose itself. So people set New Year's resolutions based on just some, oh, I want to look better and this or that. They're wants. But we have to actually take a step back and understand it's the strength of our purpose itself. It's not our strength that holds us to the finish line. So people will use discipline. People will use, some distractions, things to hold them off, but temptation will give in about 14 to 20 days into the new year. So how do we work past those temptations with clarity of purpose? So as I said, it's not your strength that holds you to your purpose. It's the strength of the purpose itself. And Elon Musk and Bill Gates and some of these others are abundantly clear what their why is. So we start with the end in mind, and then think about that if you're going to run a marathon, where you're just going to run. You have to know the distance. I run a half marathon, a marathon, an ultra. When we know the distance, it's a lot easier to work a training plan in reverse to the start point than it is to go forward, hoping that we can actually get to that distance. So they think differently. They ignore the naysayers because they're keeping their eye on the goal line, and they immerse themselves with other people that are supportive, and they know how to say no.
I really love that, and it just so many golden nuggets. The next, and I actually experimented with the same thing. Is I started my resolutions in November, and so just basically when January 1st came around, it wasn't just every day was just kind of smooth sailing. Next question I have for you is this idea is leadership and influence. And what was interesting was, I read, and there was the inauguration yesterday, and the theme was distrust and lack of trust in government and leadership and authority, and just kind of like this parasitic. So how do you recommend inspiring others to achieve greatness? Because people seem to have lost faith in the system, and a lot of people are like, forget this, I'm going to start my own company, I'm going to do what I want to do, I'm not going to work for a corporation. Talk about that.
Well, I would say what that's really kind of talking about is in today's world, people have good reason to distrust. We have an old proverb, Ronald Reagan used to say it, which is actually a Russian proverb, but trust but verify. And we have now verified that the elected leaders, if we really kind of cease operating according to societal's expectations or somebody else's rules rather than our own intuitive principles, then we're able to actually look at it and say, if I actually get rid of the labels of the party and I look at the behavior of the elected officials, they're all quite underwhelming and disappointing. And so we have a change in our society. If you look at the elected incoming officials, many of them come from the business world. Many of them are not career politicians. And that's really our society saying we're done with the career. I'm a politician and that's best for you, because it's really about them staying in office at any cost and any means. And now you have an incoming, or you now have a seated legislation and a system where they're saying we're going to run this like a business, and we're not going to go based on anything other than your ability to perform. I mean, if you're running a business, it's the only way you can succeed is to say, look, we're going to allow you to come in based on your merit. Now, can we give special provisions? Well, I have a foundation of, I think, about 20 years now, where we help the university students in the United States that otherwise might not be able to afford tuition. So we can do mechanisms to help and support people without the means to rise and grab the brass ring. But what we don't do is lower the bar so that it actually hurts, our society and our system. And so what we've seen is that people don't trust because what they perceive as love is really just horse trading. I will do this in exchange for you giving me that. And that's really not a lasting formula. A lasting formula has a couple of ingredients in it. One, so if you look at a lot of these folks, they actually have a spiritual grounded foundation. We often don't hear about that with leaders today. We often don't hear about that with entrepreneurs. But research and studies have shown, I think it was a Harvard ongoing study for quite a while, is entrepreneurs tend to be more spiritual and religious than others because they have to have a ground. They have to have something that can stabilize them when the economy takes a hit, when the revenue takes a hit, when their client base takes a hit. They need something to be able to stand on that is firm that they can then get back up and move forward. Elon Musk, as an example, of course, Donald Trump, of course, they've been knocked down and have scuffed knees, but do they get back up? So that's the first, is that they're usually spiritually inclined. We can go into what that depth means, probably on a different question or different time. The second is that they will ask a question, what is best for the business? Not for themselves. What is best for the business? And that means that they're not going to compromise in ways that hurt the business. And so those are the people that we want to look to that can actually make difficult decisions. Why? Because if anything worth achieving, it's going to have pain. Suffering is optional. I choose not to suffer.
Yeah, really interesting. I know we can go on. It's just kind of reminds me of just like over the last 25 years, everything is getting worse and worse and more expensive. So it's just kind of, it's like what you were talking about. Next question
Well,
is,
to a certain
go ahead.
degree, I came on that. I think it was Helen Keller that said, some people see ugliness in the world, and there is, but I choose to see the beauty.
Mm.
Now, she was blind and deaf, but she chose to see the beauty. So, all their, wolf in sheep clothes out there, yes. Are there untrusty elected officials? Of course. But what are we tuning into? And so many people don't realize the greatest gift that we got from God was love. The second is choice. And these leaders choose. If you looked at just as an example, if you looked at Donald Trump in the first term elected campaign versus the last term campaign, his message was completely different. In the first term, it was, I'm going to drain the swamp. This is what's wrong. These people are horrible. And you saw way less of that. And in this last one, it was, here's where I'm going. Here's what I'm going to accomplish. I mean, think about, have you ever seen, and based on how old you look, I would say you've never experienced a president that actually said, we're going to expand. We're going to gain more. We're going to build and generate. Just the simple saying, we're going to change this body of water to the Gulf of the United States. And then Mexico immediately responds back, no, we'll accept Gulf of America. I mean, that takes balls because he's got a vision, right? And so when we look at that is really about saying, yeah, there's problems, and I choose not to focus on the problems. I choose to focus on where we're going. We have to ask that question: where am I going, and who's coming with me? So he didn't look at who's coming with me because he realized from the first administration that he was in that he asked who's coming with me because he had no clue what he thought he knew business, and that translated into government, and he quickly understood politics is a whole different beast. And he got his butt handed to him at that point, right? And he's like, okay, now I get it. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I'm bringing in people from the business world, and we are just going to gut both sides of the party.
Mm.
We'll see what happens, right? But
Yeah.
what he's choosing is to say, I'm going here rather than looking in the mirror and saying, I'm going to be a victim. You can't be victorious and a victim simultaneously. You have to drop the story. But there's pain that is part of success. It's one of the ingredients. Let's say in a recipe, let's make it the ratio of the salt rather than the flour or the sugar. But suffering are the stories about the pain, and they choose not to engage in the stories. So if you look at Elon Musk, he doesn't really entertain the stories. Occasionally he'll respond to them, and then occasionally he reacts to them. But for the most part, he just ignores the story and says, I'm going to go focus here. And while it's painful, this is what's going to allow me to summit and accomplish and say, we're going to Mars.
Hmm. Yeah, fascinating. And there's just so much gold, and hopefully the next 4 years are going to be much better than the last 20. And
Let's hope, right? An example of that is, are we going to complain if the stock market or something goes, down? Well, money doesn't disappear. It just changes address. Figure
yeah.
out where it's moving to and get there before it arrives, and you'll make a killing.
Oh, interesting. Next question I have for you is, a lot of recent is just maintaining motivation and resilience when facing significant challenges and turning setbacks. And what is your secret sauce, or what is your insight to the audience that really can help them propel them forward?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I will say there's two things. One is we make the rules really too hard to win. I've been taking missionaries down to Guatemala for almost 20 years or more. And they get down there, and at some point, a new one will say, these people have absolutely nothing. It's the developing part of the world, the poorest of the poor. They have absolutely nothing, yet they seem to be happier. And I say, oh, they don't seem to be. They are happier. They're like, but they have nothing. How can they be happier? And I don't answer the question. I say, just observe. And when you have an answer, come back. And ultimately, many come back and say, I don't know. I said, it's real easy. They make the rules easy to win. We in the Western world make the rules really hard to win, right? I can't be happy until I have X amount of money in my checking account, my savings account, my investment retirement. I have to live in X zip code. I have to have this badge on the hood of my vehicle. I have to have this signature or logo on my purse. We just make the rules so bloody hard to win that whoever has the least amount of rules is happiest. So it's an understanding that happiness is not an effect, it's a choice. So that's really one of the first things that we can do is make the rules easy to win. And second is how do we do that? By breaking the steps down into bite-sized pieces. I mean, when we look at something and see that it's a boulder, it's going to roll over us from Indiana Jones. But if we break it down into small bite-sized pebbles, we can throw one pebble and another pebble and another pebble. And pretty soon we've created quite a pile that might end up being a mountain that we summit. So make the rules easy to win and then break the steps down into manageable bite-sized pieces. It's the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
We have around 4 or 5 minutes remaining, and so I wanted to talk to you about your current work and your book, and kind of talk about the key ideas and principles and takeaways, and how people can find you and reach out to you and follow you.
Sure. Thank you. The book you can find on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, anywhere out there through my publicist. But the work that I'm really doing today is taking the content and making it relevant in context. But I'm doing that in a way that has never been done before. So you have the Tony Robbins, the Grant Cardones, the Michael Singer. You have all of these big names of the world that charge massive, $10,000 to $30,000 to $50,000 to have access to the best of the best of their materials. Well, I've been doing this for a long time and worked with those folks and have my own understanding, and then breaking that down into bite-sized pieces, building a content library, and I'm going to be making that available soon at a subscription price of $2 to $3 per month, so that the developing parts of the world have access in an affordable way. And I'm not going to raise the price for people in developed parts of the world. Why? Because I believe if we go with the volume, then we can actually create the impact and allow people the opportunity to not just be inspired or motivated, but to actually create lasting transformation. So if you're interested in that, you'll see some changes on my website, chadecooper.com. Be able to see my book there. I've got a couple of other free books there. So we're building the library out actively. But ultimately, what I'm really doing is creating space now, an empty nester, and decided semi-retirement is for the birds. Tried it a number of times, and I'm going to come out much bigger. And I'm looking for the right clients that want to come into a couple of extra slots that I'm making available, because I have the capacity now. So if you think that that's the right opportunity for you, then you can just email Coach Cooper at chadecooper.com. We'll have a conversation and see. But I will tell you on that my rates are not the average. You really need to be committed because you're going to have to put some serious skin in the game.
Yeah, and I really love that. And for the audience, be sure to check out Chad's resources in the show notes. And again, thanks so much. Happy New Year and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Appreciate it.